history and life.
Hi there, I welcome you once again to our WASSCE History TV. And today I want us to look at the reasons for the fall of Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, or the reasons for the fall of the CPP government. In our previous video or lesson, I did introduce you to a summary of the various presidents that had ruled the country from 1957 up to 1991. And I did told you that it was a request from one of our subscribers who wanted to get information or lessons on the political history of Ghana. For instance, that of the military regimes. And so I said we were going to be doing that from now on till we are done up to 1991. So in our previous lessons, we learned about the various presidents, the military, of course, regimes, and the civilian president that ruled the country from 1957 up to 1991, which the WASSCE syllabus requires of us to do. And I'm very sure that I'm pretty sure that you are cool and you can remember. Indeed, the first president, by way of reminding ourselves, the first president of the Republic of Ghana, then for Gold Coast, was Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, who ruled from 1957 up to 1966, when he was finally overthrown by the National Liberation Council, which was a military regime. And so today we are looking at the reasons for the fall of Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, or the reasons for the fall of his party, that is the CPP party, or the CPP government. And you know, it will interest you that this CPP government was the political party that gained independence for Ghana, but due to certain reasons, this party, or this man known as Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, became unpopular in the eyes of Ghanaians, and so later his government was toppled or was overthrown by the National Liberation Council, which was a military regime. So let's look at our lesson objectives for today. Our lesson objectives for today will be that, one, discuss the reasons that contributed to the overthrow of Nkrumah's government by the armed forces, of course, by the Ghana Armed Forces in 1956. So why was Nkrumah's party overthrown? And that is basically going to be our lesson objectives for today. So let's begin with our discussions. Now, on February 1966, Nkrumah's government was toppled, or was overthrown. And the people who overthrew Nkrumah's government were the Ghana Armed Forces and the police services. So the police and the Ghana Armed Forces came together to overthrow the Nkrumah's regime or government. Now, at the time of the coup, when the coup happened, Nkrumah was not in the country at that time. He was on a peace mission in Hanoi, a city in Vietnam. And it is termed that the coup was a bloodless coup with no resistance. So nobody actually resisted the coup. As in, nobody stopped the soldiers. The people accepted it at that time. And ironically, you see, Nkrumah was on a peace mission, but it seems as if in his own country there was no peace, and so he was overthrown. Let's look at now. One important thing about Nkrumah's overthrown was that it received a spontaneous jubilation among all classes of people in Ghana. Everybody seemed to accept Nkrumah's overthrown, which is quite interesting. Even members of his own cabinet, some of course ministers, even were happy that Dr. Kwame Nkrumah was overthrown. And Nkrumah and his ministers, after they were overthrown, Nkrumah and his ministers were dismissed from office. And then the parliament was dissolved. And then, of course, after the parliament was dissolved, the CPP party was disbanded. And the 1960 constitution was also suspended. And this was the end of the first republic of the country, Ghana, because the constitution and parliament were all disbanded. So the first republic had fallen. Now, the leaders of the coup at that time were Colonel Emmanuel Kwesi Kotuka, who is named after the Kotuka airport today because it was believed that was where he was killed. Major Akwesi Amankwa Efrifa, that is A.A. Efrifa. You can see their images over here. They were the leaders of the coup. And so 2 days, that is 26 February, 2 days of the coup, they announced the National Liberation Council as the new military government that was going to take charge after Nkrumah. And this image you see here was Nkrumah after he was overthrown when he was in Vietnam. Things were not rosy. It wasn't easy for him. Good. So now let's look at the reasons why Nkrumah was overthrown. Okay. Now, Nkrumah was overthrown. One of the reasons why he was overthrown was his introduction of the Preventive Detention Act, which was shortened as the PDA. Now, the question is, what was this Preventive Detention Act? The Preventive Detention Act was an act which was introduced by Kwame Nkrumah. And in this act, it gave Kwame Nkrumah or the president the power to detain anybody whom he deemed as an enemy of the state or whom he deemed as a threat without trial. So they can detain you, imprison you without trial if you were deemed to be a threat to the nation. Okay? And that did not go down well with many people because some people were imprisoned without trial. Okay, J.B. Ankrah, for instance, and then Obichebi Lamte. These people were imprisoned without trial. Some even died in the prison. And J.B. Ankrah, for instance, died in prison. Died in prison because he was seen as, an enemy of the state by Dr. Kwame Nkrumah because of the numerous, assassination attempts that, of course, had happened to, Dr. Kwame Nkrumah. So the question is, why did Nkrumah, introduce this act? This act was introduced because he was not safe. His life was not safe, and I must tell you that Nkrumah has been one of the president in Ghana who had received a lot of assassination, about 5 or more attempts in his life. No president in this country has, of course, received such assassination attempt on his life. And so he saw his enemies or his opposition people as the people who will do that. And so, and of course, Ghanaians were not particularly, happy about some of the decisions of course, Dr. Kwame Nkrumah. Again, people were, of course, generally not interested in Nkrumah's foreign policies. There was lack of interest in Nkrumah's foreign policies. For instance, his socialist ideas and Nkrumahist ideas, and also the creating of the Continental Union government for Africa, also invited both external and internal, enemies for him. Nkrumah achieving independence for Ghana was just a stepping stone to uniting the African continent. And we will look at African unity as time moves on, and you will see the importance of African unity, why it was important for us to unite. But people did not understood him. People felt that he was spending the country's money on unnecessary things, especially trying to unite the African, of course, continent. And so a lot of people felt that was wrong. And so they were not happy with him. And all these fueled into the reasons why some of the people or the general public accepted his overthrow. And today a lot of people are lambasting the Akufo-Addo government because of the fact that the country is suffering and he is also, using the country's money in building what do you call it? I mean, in taking flight. Of course, about a private, jet, and also, of course, building cathedral. Now, the next one was that people also saw Nkrumah to misuse state funds. They felt that Nkrumah giving a loan of 10 million euro to Guinea, and Guinea needed this loan because Guinea was on the verge. The economy of Guinea was on the verge of collapse because the French decided to destroy everything that they had built for Guinea when Guinea decided not to sign the agreement that France had with her, with regards to independence. France, what you must know is that France signed an agreement with all his francophone countries that before I give you independence, these are the conditions. And Guinea did not, of course, agree to that condition. And so the French destroyed everything that they built for Guinea. And Nkrumah felt that Guinea, being an African country who needed help because he stood for his right, or he stood for the right of the people, deserved to be given help or money. And so he did it. As when we need help, we go to the IMF and other international organizations to give us help. So in its actual sense, it wasn't that bad. But people felt that you were spending the nation's money, giving it out whilst your people were suffering, and that was a reason that led people to take Nkrumah away. Again, Nkrumah established the President's Own Guard Regiment, POGR. And this, of course, President's Own Guard Regiment was established under Russian officers. And this created a great dissatisfaction among the army and the general police, because the army and the police were in charge of the president's security. And so if you establish a special intelligence, a private intelligence aside the police and the army, logically, you realize that the police and the army are not going to be happy. And to add, of course, more to this, Nkrumah also treated his personal army with preferential treatment. They were giving, incentives more than the regular army. And so the army were actually not happy with this. And also, Nkrumah dismissed two leaders of the army, Major General Otu and his deputy, J.A Ankrah, in August 1965, without any reason, because probably his life was under threat. And so he actually sacked these people. And this fueled anger, in the army and in the military. So it wasn't, it is not surprising that indeed it was the army and the police that united to topple the government of Dr. Kwame Nkrumah. But of course, the question is, why would Nkrumah establish a president's own guard, special intelligence for himself, when the army had been protecting him way from 1957, 58, 9, onwards? You see, the reason was that Nkrumah suffered many assassination attempts, even some from his own police officer. There was one that he was in his house, and the police officer who was guiding him, was supposed to guide him, actually tried to kill him. Had it not been Nkrumah, having skills in Taekwondo, Nkrumah had been killed by them. And if you look at the images on your right, you see surgical battles with gunmen and conquest, and all these stories were in the news almost every day. There was one that he was on his way from Burkina Faso, somewhere in the northern region. He had gone to Burkina Faso, and then he was coming at a place called Kulungugu or so. Nkrumah was, when, of course, he saw a lot of people lining up there, to meet him. So he told the driver to stop so that he could meet or speak to the people or the Ghanaians who were cheering him up. Upon getting that from his car, a small girl, brought a bouquet of flowers, and Nkrumah was going to collect, not knowing there was a bomb hidden in the bouquet of flowers, and it exploded, and the girl died. And lucky enough, Nkrumah did not die. So all these, activities, all these things, we don't know who was doing all this. We don't know who was behind all this. But to Nkrumah, it was the opposition. There was even an instance whereby a military man known as Salifu died for Nkrumah. He took a bullet for Nkrumah when people tried to kill him. And as we've seen in the newspaper here, Salifu gets full military barrier. And so, as a president, I don't think you will sit there for this to happen. Now, people are complaining that Akufo-Addo is actually spending money on private jet. And I heard one MP who says that, no, the president's safety is paramount. And so we can't jeopardize, we can't play with the president's safety. And I asked myself, if there is a problem with even the national jet, I mean, taking a private jet, that is not safety. Because you are being flown by somebody you don't know. So that is not even safety. US will not put their president's life, for an unknown person to flow. I mean, of course, to fly their president. That is not safety. But of course, the president's safety is paramount, and so he needs to use that money to go for a private jet. So Nkrumah also thought that since I can't trust the army anymore, can't trust the police anymore, then I have to also protect myself by forming my own army. And that is what happened. Again, the establishment of the one-party system. Nkrumah thought that one-party system was good for the country because at that time there were so many political parties that were formed on regional, ethnic, and religious basis. We had a party known as the Muslim Association Party. We had the Northern People's Party. We even have the National Liberation Movement, which was formed by the Asante people. So, party. We even have Ewe, Togoland, something party. Parties were formed on regional basis, and that, to Nkrumah, was not good for the country. Okay, so if you read the image on your right, it says what? Diffuse religion. I said early tendencies to centralize in order to diffuse regional, ethnic, and religious differences. And mind you, today, if you look at many African countries, because of regionalism, because of ethnicity, it has caused so many wars. It has caused so many civil wars. Look at, of course, what happened in Rwanda with the Tutsi and the Hutu. So you realize that regionalism has caused many wars, even in Nigeria today. The Boko Haram, all these are part of this. And Nkrumah knew that this would happen if the country does not centralize and become one. So to him, the flag of the party was going to be the flag of Ghana, so that we take away all that. So he named. Of course, he did an announcement on the radio and chose a new parliament. Instead of allowing a competitive elections to take place. The amazing thing was that in this parliament, even the MPs that Nkrumah chose, some of them did not even know where their constituencies were, and that was the funny part. So I think that yes, the people were not with him. The people did not really understand what Nkrumah was trying to do. And of course, allowing one party, people of course Ghanaians at that time would see it as undemocratic, and so he was taken away, he was being overthrown. Widespread of corruption, I don't want to talk about this. Now, whilst people were suffering, inflation was soaring, the government was telling people to tighten their belt. Meanwhile, they were living flamboyantly, as we see even today. It is on record that Krobo Edusei's wife actually ordered the golden bed from the UK in the course of the economic crisis. Okay, and so that is really something to talk about. Let's look at the last one, and then we are done with our discussion. So some people also believe that there was some foreign influence in his overthrow, because they believe that the CIA, which is the US agency, was behind his overthrow. They believe that they sponsored the opposition of core parties in trying to overthrow Nkrumah. And so and Nkrumah would always lambast the foreign powers or Western powers, calling them imperialist and calling them neo-colonialist, and using all kinds of derogatory terms. And then some of his policies, especially the socialist policies, were also not accepted by the West, and so they felt that it was good to take him away. And don't forget, all these policies were made so that the country could develop, and so that did not happen. So after he was overthrown, he did not return to Ghana, but rather he went to Guinea to stay there. And Sekou Touré, who of course had been given 10 million euros made him a co-president. And he died of cancer in Romania on 27 April 1972. He died at the age of 63, and this was the newspaper that recorded the death of Kwame Nkrumah, the Ghanaian Times. And he was buried in Guinea, and later, I think a champon brought the body to Nkrofo, and then, of course, Rawlings also exhumed the body again and buried him in Accra and created a special mausoleum for him, as you have seen it here. And yeah, so these were the various reasons that led to the coup against Kwame Nkrumah, why the military took the action, and why the general public also accepted the actions of the military. All right, good. So this is a question for you all to try your hands on. This is an objective question actually, so try your hands on it. Could come. Thank you for your time, and we shall meet some other time. Subscribe to the channel. Have a nice day.